For those of you who are part of our plant-powered Metro New York community, today's changemaker needs no introduction. Lianna Levine Reisner has been at the helm of this amazing team for 3+ years of its existence, and tonight we get to ask the hows and whys of her involvement in the whole food plant-based movement. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Spellos, and welcome to another edition of Changemakers, where we get to spend some quality time with people in our own community, making a huge difference in lives, their own, their families, and many, many others. Passionate, intelligent, deeply motivated. It's no surprise that Leanna is one of the major voices here in the greater New York area for the plant-based movement. When she shares the importance of healthy eating in our plant-based Jumpstart program, she's not just uttering words. She understands deeply through her experience how life-changing a plant-based lifestyle can be. So it's with that, I welcome Lianna Levine Reisner. Good evening.
Thank you, Jim. Beautiful words. I really appreciate it.
You know, this truth be told, we get a chance to do this on a semi-regular basis, but it's really nice to have 30 dedicated minutes and to be able to share with people who you are and what you are and why all this stuff is happening. But I'm thinking the best way to start the conversation, because we all struggle with this, is the elevator pitch about our lifestyle. Because I can't even imagine to count the number of times that someone's asked, plants? Really? Why? So if you're in an elevator, masked of course, and someone says, why a plant-based lifestyle? What's that quick pitch that we all need to know that we can learn from you?
Thanks, Jim. And you're totally putting me on the spot, but I'm going to do my best here. I would start with my story and just say, a few years ago when I chose a plant-based diet for myself, I was able to reverse endometriosis and lose a lot of body weight naturally. And through that process of finding myself and being reconnected with my body, I came to realize how powerful food is. And when we think about it, at the end of the day, it's the plants where all of the nutrients of our food system are found. Plants are where the animals get their nutrients from. The calcium from the cow is actually from the plants that they eat, all the other minerals, and the fiber, which is so rich in plant foods. And so when we look at our food system as a whole and we think about what's going to be most health promoting, the plants are the winners. So the more we fill our plates with those foods, the better off we are.
Do we dare even ask the question, why doesn't anyone know all this stuff?
Yeah, well, my husband asks me this all the time, always playing devil's advocate. I love him for it. And he says, if it really were true, wouldn't a whole lot more people know it? And I said, well, it took a long time for people to know things like that the earth was round as well. And sometimes the mysteries of our natural world aren't revealed to us until we're ready for them. And science certainly has a lot to share with us. But as I've learned from Dr. T. Colin Campbell, when we study it in its finest, smallest parts, it's a little hard to see the forest for the trees. And, seeing it as a whole, you can tell that the plants are the things that make us healthy.
Last week, we had the honor of interviewing Dr. Ken Williams, and he was saying one thing about science is it's changing constantly. And I think that's one of the other struggles that we tend to have, which is we're expecting this data to be pure, pristine, and correct for the next 150 years. And it's not. It's always moving. It's always changing.
Yeah, and I think that's the excitement. I never thought that I would be a scientist, and I don't even think of myself as one now. But I feel that I'm a much more conscious consumer of science, and that is an empowering thing in and of itself.
So you had mentioned as you started talking about your health journey. I'd like you to get into that a little more in depth, and rather than me set it up for you, let me just ask you how you got involved with the plant-based community, and what was the health journey that you had that brought you to where you are now?
Sure. It was a little circuitous, and it involved a few different health issues that I had from the beginning. One of those things was some overweight postpartum after my second pregnancy. I just couldn't get rid of the weight, and it was a little bit of a burden, but it wasn't something I thought too seriously about. I also was somebody who would get colds and viruses pretty frequently, and so there was one particular instance where I had a series of colds in a row, and I just felt like I wasn't able to recover properly from it. And recognizing that my immune system was in a very fragile state, I knew I wanted to do something that would support my health. I just didn't exactly know what. But it was really my skin that sort of started me on changing my diet, where I've had skin issues since I was a teenager or preteen. And when my initial change to my diet was gluten and dairy, taking those out. And I did not see changes to my skin, but I did have complete changes to my hormonal cycle. And it was the change in my menstruation that actually was the thing that got my eyes to open and made me realize food and hormones. Oh my gosh, these things go together. I had no idea. So it was that sort of beginning point that led me down the road of much deeper inquiry, also inspired by my children and trying to raise healthy kids, that ultimately it took me, 18 months from the minute that I began my process until I found the field of plant-based nutrition. And I was extremely confused the whole way through, finding lots of interesting information, little things here and there, but ultimately, and you hear my kids in the background. So they're always coming in and giving us some kind of excitement on our plant-powered events. But when I found plant-based nutrition as a field, I became so inspired by the simplicity of the principles of it. Eat mostly plants, eat as few processed foods as you can, and try to keep it low fat, and the rest sort of falls into place. Now, after going through this process, I know there's a lot more finer details than that, but that sort of broad contours of the simplicity was really something that I thought was an amazing thing for somebody who thought she was pretty educated before to then come into and realize, it doesn't have to be too complicated.
Yeah, I think there's a duality because it's hard, but it's actually simple.
Yeah.
And I think people have a hard time wrapping their head around that nuance that's there. I don't want to say especially for the women out there, but you had endometriosis.
Yeah.
And if you can just share a little bit of that story so people know that part of the back end of the story, because it really does wrap around everything else you just mentioned.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm so excited. I'm actually going to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicines conference next week to share my story to hopefully hundreds, if not 1,000 plus doctors and other medical professionals who'll be in the audience. But my experience of endometriosis growing up was, as a pretty young kid, I was 11 when I first got my periods. I knew that there was something a little off for me. My periods would get pretty painful and heavy, and I'd have clotting associated with it, and I have also diarrhea. And I didn't really know why. I just thought I had a lot of heavy cramping that was sort of making things weird in that part of my body. And I would have to skip out on things and just spent a lot of time sort of worrying about what my life was going to be like during those few days of the month. And it even sort of like influenced where I wanted to go career-wise, because I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to stand in front of a classroom of kids and hold myself together. And I can't do that a few days a month. It's just not sustainable. So, when I got into my later teens, they said, it's time for you to go on the birth control pill to try to regulate your hormones. There was no talk at that point about side effects. I didn't know that it would increase my cancer risk, and my cancer risk is already high because of my family history. So these kinds of things were just sort of standards of care that the doctors are helping patients with each day. And I had no idea that food could be related to this. But really where things accelerated was in my 20s. I had an ovarian cyst that we found that we knew to be associated with endometriosis, because when they went in to remove the cyst, knowing that it was a bit too large for comfort and could ultimately make my fertility compromised in some way, when they removed it, they realized, there are these endometrial implants on your intestines and on other parts of your, the system down there. And that was an explanation for why I had been experiencing these heavy periods all along. I had heard about endometriosis. I wondered if I had it, but nobody ever said, this is what you have, or here's how to deal with it in any different way. So once that happened, I knew I was diagnosed, but I didn't have a solution. And so when I came to this sort of landing place where food was making such a difference for my menstrual health, that was where I got so excited, because I really, I went from heavy, painful periods to barely caring a lot. There's discomfort, of course. Jim, you wouldn't know, but
But we all know. Yeah.
We are right. If you've ever hung out with a woman before, there can be discomfort. And I just didn't feel pain like I did before. It wasn't unmanageable like it was before.
You were vegetarian growing up, were you not?
No, I was. We kept kosher in my home, and so we did eat meat, but it was much less frequently than other people in my community did, and most people do. We had a lot of home cooked meals. My mom was so good about preparing healthy meals, and she even went on a little bit of a health kick herself to support me and my brother when I was in middle school. So we got rid of a lot of processed foods in our diet, but it wasn't quite where I've landed now. And God love her, she did so much research and found so many interesting things about how food and behavior and health issues were related. But I feel like I extended her legacy in a way and brought it forward to the next level. And I feel really excited about where it all landed.
And if I can add to, you're an incredibly positive person. I've gotten to know that over the years that we've known each other. And I got to believe that helped get you through all the stuff you were going through and finding that solution that you knew was right.
Yeah.
It was the right thing for your body.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because as positive as I might seem to you, I also have this inner negative voice that I've always been trying to overcome. Mostly, just recognizing holes and flaws where I see them. I've always been sort of critical of things, but I try to be diplomatic about it. And that was partially why in my career, I ended up studying positive organizational behavior, because I wanted to learn like strategies for how we build communities where people can coexist beautifully together and achieve goals together well. So the positivity that I feel now is actually, it's driven so much by my own experience and my goal to really share all of what we have learned collectively about food and health in a way that people will hear it. And we can't do that when we have negativity or even too much neutrality about ourselves as well. There has to be a positive orientation to start the conversation.
So you mentioned communities, and it's a great jumping off point for us to get into the genesis of this community, which I believe started as a plant pod community. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. For anybody who's watching who doesn't know, I had read Dr. T. Colin Campbell's book, Whole Rethinking the Science of Nutrition. And he is also known for co-authoring the China Study, which is perhaps the more famous book. Dr. Campbell's son, Nelson Campbell, made a wonderful film called Plant Pure Nation, available on YouTube for free. And at the end of it, there's a call to action that says, if you're inspired by the plant-based lifestyle and want to bring this into your community, join a pod or start one yourself. And the pods were intended to be homegrown, volunteer-run groups all across the country and now the world to build community around healthy plant-based eating. So I joined this was in 2017. And thankfully for me, there were about 80-some people who had signed up to be part of the Manhattan pod in New York City. And I called a meeting of that group after I decided I wanted to be a volunteer leader. And 25 people of those 80 came in a room together. Now, this was pre-COVID, so pretty good. But I think that response rate shows you how passionate the people were at that moment. And when we started, I got to know my colleague, Lynn Diamond, who has been working with me since that very first meeting. And then later got to meet also a few other folks who were running pods in other areas of New York City and Long Island, Mitch Castell in Long Island and Roger Van Vlissingen in the Bronx. And then Enrica Sacca joined us in Queens. And so the five of us were very amiable, doing very fun and interesting things related to plant-based eating and education in our own communities. But I was like, gosh, Manhattan is really big. Where do I go next? And I felt like I had some compatriots in this journey of building community and trying to educate our peers and others. So Lynn and Mitch and Enrica and Roger and I came together. We had some meetings, and I proposed that we create something that was bigger than any one pod or any one person could do on our own. And that was creating Plant-Powered Metro New York. So we started those conversations in 2018 and then launched in early 2019.
So New York, just his perfect New York story. So what was the first event? What was the first big event that Plant-Powered Metro New York
Well, it's interesting. Just before we incorporated, we had Dr. Neil Barnard from PCRM, the Physicians Committee,
Don't
come.
go for the top or anything, with
Right. No, I mean, I didn't know a lot of people in the field. I was still getting to know people, but Dr. Barnard, being the wonderful, incredible person that he is, was like, "Oh yeah, I'll come to New York and speak." And we set up a venue. We have great partners at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Brought him in, and people came from all over the area to see him. We filled a space with more than 200 people there, and that was again early 2019. And we had set it up that we started our first big communal jumpstart right after that, hosted by the JCC, run by Plant Powered Manhattan at the time, but we changed in the middle to Metro New York. And that was so exciting because it was a natural flow where you excite people around the science of nutrition and what's possible. Dr. Barnard's an incredible messenger in that regard. And then we had 25 people who came into our very first community jumpstart. And I say community jumpstart because we actually did one previously with Somos Community Care, which serves a large Latin immigrant community here, with 40 amazing people from the Harlem community who did actually a bilingual Spanish-English program with us prior to all of this. So we've been innovating and having a lot of fun for a long time now.
Rumor has it one Carol Levy was actually one of the Jumpstart participants.
That's right. Our very own chef Carol Levy was in that first JCC Jumpstart. And I think she was recruited by our friend and board member, Wendy Sachs, who now runs the Chef Carol show along with you. And Carol came in thinking, oh, I could never take, eggs out of my diet and bake without sugar. What are you talking about? But of course, we know the end of that story. And here she is. And
okay, so let's say I get involved, or I stumbled upon the organization December 2019 when Dr. Greger was speaking.
Yeah.
And it seemed like such a great event to go to. And then 2 months later, the world shuts down. So what are your thoughts? All of a sudden, now you have this organization, you have some successes, and now we're all stuck in a home and what's Zoom? So.
Yeah, it seemed anticlimactic. We had a lot of great things lined up to do in person in March 2020, and they all went down the tube. But here's what happened, Jim. All along, the premise for Plant Powered Metro New York was that we would be building a network of change agents. That's why I call myself a network director and not an executive director, because I'm sort of here facilitating change agents doing great things in a network together. So when the pandemic started, we had already a really wonderful base of people in our network, people who were aware of plant-based nutrition, who some of them are educators, some of them have great facilitation skills, some of them have something to share that is worth it. People who are professionals in the field, doctors, dietitians, our culinary folks. And we got, I put out an email, and it was like the first 2 weeks of March. And I said, you know what, things are shutting down. What can we do online? Who wants to step up and do something? And within 2 weeks, we had, a dozen programs on the schedule, and lots of people tuned in from all over the place to join us, because what else were you going to do in March 2020? And that was really the beginning of this moment where we moved from being an on the ground, boots on the ground kind of organization that I had said all along, oh, I don't ever want to create online content. I just want to be a bridge to all of those other great doctors and people who are publishing interesting information and then getting it in the hands of people. And then here we are producing online events and content all the time. So it's been a really eye-opening experience, but it wasn't a downer whatsoever. It was actually a huge buoy. And I remember my family and I we had the luxury to retreat to my in-laws for a few months at the beginning of the pandemic. And the biggest toll from the pandemic was just my sleep, because I stayed up too late. After my husband finished work, I'd go to work and sort of get things organized for Plant Powered and try to build the network more and have our people feel better connected, and then figure out what's the right educational thing that needs to be out there in the world right now to respond to the moment.
So is it safe to say the pandemic actually boosted the Plant Powered community because it really brought everything together in sort of a synergistic fashion?
Yes, and also I'd say because we were and are continue to be a young organization, we didn't have the sort of the liability of space and of budget and we had the agility and that nimbleness to be able to say, okay, well, we were going to do that, but guess what? Now we're going to do this. So it just, it became like a natural thing that we would just change. And that's what happened.
There was no point where you thought this isn't going to work. This might actually not become what I had hoped it was going to become.
Actually, no, because I felt that in those first few sessions that we held online at the beginning, people were so happy to be connected. And these are people I've never met before, even. Like, there were plenty of people who had come to live events with us before, but there were lower barriers to entry. And I feel like that's a really important thing. When you have a radical message, people aren't necessarily going to come into a live space with you and put themselves at risk of being in a room that they might have to leave. But if they come into a Zoom room or they go to some other kind of virtual forum, they can lurk, they can watch. And I think that actually opens up hearts and minds even more because, they're not worried about the fear factor of what they're going to see and be a part of.
So fast forward to 2022, and actually it's already been mentioned once, we have a Jumpstart coming up. Can you explain to people what the Jumpstart is and how important it is for people to take advantage of what this community is offering?
Absolutely. So I want to also thank Nelson Campbell, who I mentioned before in the film Plant Pure Nation. He features a community Jumpstart, and he had, of course, the most amazing ability to provide meals to his Jumpstarters, thanks to his wife's cooking, Kim Campbell, the Plant Pure Kitchen. And so using that model and also having worked with Nelson and some of his staff at the Plant Pure Communities Organization with the Spanish Jumpstart that I mentioned, we were able to sort of create more of a curriculum around how do you learn about plant-based nutrition in a way that sort of eases you into the learning and invites you to jump fully into the lifestyle, which for many people can feel very scary, even if we feel like we're ready because we've got health concerns and gosh darn, we gotta do something about it. There's still so much that we carry culturally, so much that we carry emotionally that makes the transition to a plant-based lifestyle difficult. And what I love about the Jumpstart philosophy is that, it says we're going to cut off where we were before and be in an entirely new space for 21 days or 14 days. We've also done 10 and 30-day programs. And if we just create that, carve out that space for ourselves, then we have the ability to sort of breathe a little bit more and lean into the opportunity to try new things. And so it's hard. It is hard. You have to clear the space for yourself time-wise and think about what is it about my environment that may be preventing me from making healthy choices in the first place. But the Jumpstart, as we've designed it, is to sort of set people up with preparation for a week. And then we meet weekly to do these educational sessions and have also weekly mentorship meetings with our wonderful peer mentors who come from all over the place, as far as Miami right now, to be supportive of folks who want to make the change.
I think one thing between you and the mentors and everyone involved is you've created such a safe space for these people to go all in on something that they really don't know a lot about, or maybe they've been pushed a little bit. So it's, again, a testimony to, I think, to your positivism and how you are leading by example what this organization needs to accomplish. So we keep moving forward this year, and we have a second annual Plantathon, and I think you and I both can hardly believe there was a first annual one. So what's on tap? What's coming up in November on Giving Tuesday for us?
Yeah. So for anybody who didn't see, last year, Jim and I had a marathon event on Giving Tuesday that Jim dubbed Plantathon. And this year we're going to bring it back because why not? In the throes of, the winter, we can all be back online again. I know it's felt like nice to have the summer ease and so many people traveling now. But when we go back into the dark days of winter, we'll be back online. We're going to be bringing experts from all over the country to speak about different aspects of plant-based nutrition and lifestyle. Some of it will be humorous, some of it will be insightful, some of it will be stuff you've heard before, but from a new voice. And Plantathon is going to be actually something that this year our theme is Many Voices, One Mission, Health for All. And so just like last year, we'll be featuring people from our community network as the grassroots voices of change alongside these sort of gurus in the field who have inspired so many of us.
we have only a few more minutes left, but I want to jump on top of that great slogan that we have, because part of the issue that I have right now within the entire community of healthy eating is what I'm calling the cognitive dissonance that's out there, that there are all these little silos of doing different things. Do you think that actually we can all come together to say, you know, there are many ways within the plant community to be able to be healthy, and it doesn't matter if you are nutritarian or raw or this or that, you're still part of this family. Do you think that message ever can get out to enough people?
I do, and I would hope that we're modeling that in a way, because you know, it is hard when you look out there and you see so-and-so's program for health, which seems a little bit different from the other person's, you know, diet, if you will. The whole idea is to go back to those sort of three big ideas that are simple, that spoke to me at the beginning: eat mostly plants, eat the mostly processed, and watch your fat intake. And I think when I look out, I do see a lot of generosity. Like when we're always planning our events, we have so many people who are ready to come and participate and share whatever their wisdom is. And then we try to help curate and distill and make it digestible for everybody. Food puns always intended around here. And I think the challenge is just for those who have only heard one perspective and heard it strongly, and then hear another, or for those who have tried one approach to plant-based eating and felt like it didn't work for them and didn't hear another perspective. What we want to show is that even within the plant-based movement, there's a lot of individuality in how you know, we can thrive with plants. And the more that we can get that diversity out there, the more people can find their place in the movement and can find the solutions that will hopefully work best for their bodies.
As we expected, 30 minutes goes awful quick. I have two last questions for you. Number one, what's PPMNY going to look like in 10 years?
So I always said that I wanted to not be able to go out of business in 10 years, which any good nonprofit would say. The reality, though, is I see huge opportunities for us to partner with larger organizations that have a large following, and by that, school systems or hospital systems or networks of professionals who are interested in supporting the wellness of their members. And to me, it would be so gratifying to have large institutions recognize how powerful plant-based nutrition is for health, and to call upon community expertise and support to make it possible. I think what we see in the field, especially in this digital age, is that it's so easy, or it's common, to create an asynchronous program that somebody can log on to and learn about plant-based nutrition from. But at the end of the day, we're human creatures and we need relationships. And in order to make behavior change possible, we need the community support and connection and the trust to be able to enter into a different worldview and paradigm together. So my hope is that Plant Powered Metro New York can be a partner to anybody who wants to, usher in that paradigm of health for the future.
Great answer. Last question. What's one question you've never been asked before that you think the answer needs to get out there?
Oh man, what is one question I've never been asked before?
Yeah. But the answer you're burning to give that answer out to people.
Oh gosh, I think it would be. Oh, now you got me, Jim. You got me.
Okay, so what's the one question you get asked most often?
I think I get asked so many questions. It's sort of ridiculous. Most often I get asked, how do I get involved? Right.
Okay,
and that's actually
how does somebody get involved?
And that makes me feel that warms my heart, honestly. Yeah. You can get involved by coming and talking to me if you'd like, and just, telling us, what are your talents? What are your skills? What do you care about in this field of food and health? And how might everything that you can bring together into this movement, how can we harness it? That's really the question of the hour for everybody. And I think everybody has something to give. And I know some of our listeners here, like Louise, hi Louise, are members of our volunteer team who they know they want to contribute because they've had personal transformation stories. So there are many ways to get involved, whether you want to be a mentor or you want to organize programming or you want to reach out to people or you just want to figure out how to find your authentic voice in this movement. We're hoping to be that place of internal support so that people can be better leaders and advocates in the field.
One thing that's clear is that this is a place of incredible authenticity, and it really starts with you, Leanna. So I want to thank you so much for being part of tonight and sharing your story, and more importantly, sharing you with the community. It makes a huge difference to a lot of people. So thanks.
Thank you, Jim. My pleasure.
Next month on Changemakers, we will have the Main Street Vegan, Victoria Moran. I can't wait. We'll find out more about her. We'll find out about the Main Street Vegan Academy and what other interesting things she's working on. And spoiler alert, she's working on some really interesting stuff. So on behalf of everyone at Planned Parenthood Metro New York, I'm Jim Spellos, always wishing you optimal health, and see you right here next month again on Changemakers.